Hello everybody. We are discussing about the our chapter number first, Introduction to Biostatistics, and till now we have seen about the population, sample, variable, and data. So, if we have to study the population, then we have to select sample as a representative of that population. Okay, and sample, it may be in the two form, like here variable means sample. Suppose our sample size is 300. So what is this 300? 300 is a numerical property of our sample. Then uh, just like we are going to mention the color of flowers in botanical gardens. So color is a attribute type of variable, means we need to express our sample in the form of variable, whether it is ranked variable, whether it is attribute. Then we have seen, means to study the sample we have to collect the data of that sample. So we have also seen the definition of data. Okay, and then uh, let us see about the two types of data. Generally, there are two types of data, which is called as primary data and secondary data. In the last lecture, we have also seen about somewhat introduction about the primary data and secondary data. Let us go towards the definition. Data obtained by investigator from personal experimental study is called primary data. Means the study which you have done by yourself is called as primary data. Then secondary data. The data obtained from secondary source such as from journal, magazines, research paper is known as secondary data. Then you can ask me, ma'am, if we collect the data from newspaper, but the data is collected by ourselves, so why it is called secondary data? Because the data in newspaper, the data in research paper, which is not collected by you, it is collected by someone else. I agree that you have find that information, you have chosen that information, and then after that reading, and after that thoroughly analysis, you used that particular accurate information in your study. But the data is not organized by, is not collected by you. It is collected by someone else. It is collected by that particular author, and then it is secondarily used by you. So hence it is called as secondary data. Then what are the advantages of primary data? It is the data collected by a particular person or organization for his her own use from the primary uses or sources. Then in scientific work only, in case of secondary data, in scientific work only primary data is used. Okay, then in a primary data is collected by the researcher themselves. This kind of data is new and original for research information. And then in case of secondary data, the secondary data is the data collected by some other person or organization for his her own use, but the investigator can also use it. Here some examples: research observations. It may be possible to obtain additional data during the study period. Then in case of secondary data, it means that the data can be primary for one person. The data can be primary for one person and secondary to another person. Then primary data and secondary data, these are some other distinguishing features of primary data and secondary data. The investigator has to collect data specific to the problem under study. Means to collect, there is a specific aim behind the collecting of a particular data. In case of secondary data, secondary research is using information that has already made produced by another people. In case of primary data, if required, it may be possible to obtain additional data during the study period, and a secondary source is used by a person usually not present at the event. Means, for example, in case of secondary data, you have collected some information, but you are not the witness of that things. Means you are not personally present at that point. Okay, and it relying on primary sources, documents for information. For example, books, magazine, internet, newspaper, etc. So, in case of primary data, if required, it may be possible to obtain additional data during the study period. Means you can find out some more information related to the primary data. So, you should one thing you should keep in your mind that while you are doing any scientific research, so secondary there is no value for the secondary data. You should have to always refer, or you should always have to refer the primary data in case of scientific research. And some next features: the investigator has to contain with all hazards of data collection, deciding why, what, how to collect. For example, what is the meaning of this sentence? Let's read it again. The investigator has to contain with all hazards of data collection, deciding why, what, how to collect. Suppose you have to ask to do the survey of a particular area, or a survey for pathological diseases, or a survey for the means survey to examine the, or survey to record the biodiversity of that particular area. So in this case, this is the primary type of data. Means you have to go yourself there, then you have to take the photographs, you have to take the readings, you have to put the names of that particular plants, their families, so like this, so many of things. But before starting your survey, you have to do somewhat type of homework to means how can you go there. Means is there any way, means whether in which month you have to go there. Things start from this point. Means things start from this question: in which month you will find most biodiversity in that area. If you will go in off season, then what biodiversity will you find in that area? No no any biodiversity you will find. So you have to first you have to study in which month is suitable to visit that particular area. Okay, after that, how to go the in that area? Means by bike, by bus, or by personal vehicle any. So you have to means which things should be convenient to go there. After that, you have to decide, means what things, um, means you have to decide that what things should be with you, means your friends, your any brother sister, any notebook, camera stand, pen, pencil, any other the things. You have to first decide, you have to first think, and then means many hazardous things included in case of primary data. So on the other hand, in case of secondary data, it is very easy to deal with the secondary data. The data is already there, no hassles of data collection. Means suppose you have to survey that particular area, and in the next year batch or next year student, they, for any reason they could not do visit in that particular area. So what they do, they can simply refer your primary data as a secondary data. So whatever hassles, means whatever things you have to deal while collecting the data, there is no efforts, means secondary to collect the secondary data is means just effortless process like this. So in a second point, getting the data collected means personally or through others. Then in the second point, it is less expensive. Okay. In case of primary data, getting funding and dealing with funding agents, it is the most tedious task. Then the investigator is not personally responsible for the quality of data. Okay. In case of secondary data, you can give means you have to means you can no you have to give the credit of that particular author about their data, because or if you're not like that, means if you not do so, then it is called as unethical in the field of research. It is called as unethical process. So the correct way is that while collecting the secondary data, you have to refer that particular person name in front of that particular data. So the investigator is not personally responsible. So whatever the data is given there, whether it is good, bad, right, wrong, you are not personally responsible for that data. Then the investigator cannot decide what is collected. So it is because the data is totally of secondary type. So you can means you cannot decide what should have to collect or what should not have to collect. Then ethical consideration means permission, consent, like this. Means suppose for example, you have to visit any particular place, just in case of any laboratory or any particular biodiversity spot. So you have to ask, or you have to get the permission of that particular authority. At that means you have to take a previous permission, then you can visit that particular area, like this. So these things happen in case of primary data. So you in case of means while collecting the primary data, collection of primary data is somewhat tedious job. It is and you have to tackle all these situations. Sometimes you may get a good experience, sometimes you may get bad experience. And in case of secondary data, one can only hope that the data is good quality. If you are lucky, then you will get a good quality data, or otherwise means you have to fully depend on the secondary type of data, and you have to accept whatever the primary collector or first person whatever they have collected, you have to accept it. Okay. Then this is all about the primary data and secondary data.